Brodes Media.
Fellas, ladies, gentlemen, listen up. It is finally almost here. Opening day, that's right. And what's happening opening day here at Brodes Media? Well, let me tell you. Coffee with Brodes is back. March 28th, it begins 11 a.m. And the way you get access, well, you join the community here on YouTube for a price tag of $4.99 a month. And every Monday and Thursday at 11 a.m., you see this right here? It's a cup. You know what's in this cup? Coffee. You know what we do? We drink the coffee and we hang out. We chat for members only here at Brodes Media. And I can't wait to get started March 28th. And there's also a Discord channel, that's right, where we can communicate live all day long when breaking news happens and all of it. It's amazing. The information is down below. The link to the Discord and the link to sign up for your Brodes Media membership. $4.99 a month, Mondays, Thursdays, 11 a.m. I'm telling you, it's going to be a beautiful thing. You're not going to want to miss out. Can't wait to see you all there and enjoy the show. What is going on, everybody? Welcome on in to Sports Talk with Brodes. Okay, so this is a Saturday morning, lighthearted type of pod. Because of the drama between Sean Couturier and John Tortorella, it really made me think about the other coaches in this town, Nick Sirianni, Rob Thompson, Nick Nurse, and I don't know, it just made me kind of think about who they are, their personalities, and their different styles to coaching. And it made me wonder, what coach would I want to play for if I had the opportunity to? And I went directly to Rob Thompson, and I believe that Nick Nurse follows him, and there's not a huge gap. I can survive in the Tortorella era, by the way. All right, growing up playing hockey myself, Coach Gee used to take his stick, and he would two-hand me over the head. He would shatter his Sherwood 50-30 wooden twig. I mean, I lived through it. All right, swallow your saliva. You don't deserve any water. Throw up, okay? Throw up. I'll let you get water once you vomit out your nose. That's how I used to go through conditioning tests, so I've been through it, and I could handle it. But I think John Tortorella goes overboard. I'm not against hard coaching. I'm not against throwing in a little bit of old school. Where I have an issue is he doesn't even hold himself accountable when all he does is preach accountability. You don't scratch the captain of the hockey team. This isn't little Jimmy's 14-year-old little league team. This is professional sports. So you have to handle them as professionals, whether you like it or not. And the fact that the captain of the team looks around and goes, I have no idea what he even wants me to do, that's poor communication, that's poor leadership. And Tortorella will say, well, that's on him to figure out. All right, I'm pushing certain buttons. But there is a line here, and Torts is clearly crossing that line in my eyes. But this is where I have the biggest issue of it all. If you're going to do it, have the stones to tell the world why you're making this decision. Instead, okay, so you don't, after one of the practices, you don't speak, you send one of your assistants out there. Then after overtime against Carolina, good for you, you earned a good old 1 point, which was massive because we're constantly looking at the standings. And of course, the Capitals won in a shootout against Carolina in a wild one last night, 7-6. I was only watching it because I parlayed it with one of my March Madness bets, and of course I lost, and I knew Carolina wasn't the play, but I went with it anyway, and I got a sour taste in my mouth, damn it. But in overtime, you don't utilize your best players for whatever reason. We'll never know why, because you send out Shaw afterwards to speak to the media because you don't hold yourself accountable. It cracks me up. Now, I read a piece in The Athletic, and Marty Biron, there were a few players for Torts that spoke up, and I've been on the record saying this before. I do believe that 90+% of players like John Tortorella, and I don't think people despise him by any means. He just crosses the line here and there, and when he does, it is an extremely big talking point, and right now we're living in one of those moments. So real quick, I don't hate John Tortorella. I think he does a lot of good things well. His track record speaks for itself. He always gets teams that that you feel are an underachieving type, not underachieving, that's the wrong way to put it, but maybe an undermanned team and a team that's lacking skill, he always seems to get the most out of little. So there is something to that, and he does have a Stanley Cup championship ring that's sitting on his bureau in his bedroom. So he's accomplished. There's no doubt about it. I don't think he stinks. I just wish he cleaned up some of these details like the one we're experiencing right now. But Marty Biron once spoke, and this was on The Athletic. It was an awesome piece. It gives you different perspectives of people who played for him. And he said about 95% of the locker room understands when they're in the doghouse, what they need to do, why they're not playing, but there always seem to be about 5% that were left in the dark. Well, that's silly. That's silly. If you have this open door policy, you got to give the captain more than just be better. I mean, I'm sorry, that's way too vague. This is the captain of your locker room, and this is what he does, though. He plays the mind game, so he wants it to be, hey, Cooch, you have to figure this out yourself, and if you're going to lead this room, then you got to do it. And, you know, from like an 1,000-foot view, I'm sure that sounds like, hey, that's great. Yeah, man, because there's this group of individuals that just feel that there's only one way to go about coaching, and whether you're 8, 9, 10, 11, or pro, it's the same way, but it's not. I mean, I just hate to break it to you. It's not. When star players or the better players, the respected players, the veterans, the guys that have a high ceiling in pro sports, when they go through some times of maybe not playing their best hockey, you don't just rip them out of the lineup. I've been through it before, and I'll say it again. Brad Marchand has not played the greatest hockey game every single time he takes the ice. Just doesn't happen, especially if there's a lingering issue and there's an injury and he's returning from injury. There are plenty of reasons why maybe Sean Couturier isn't playing his best, but even his best over the recent run isn't scratchable level. It's not scratchable level. There is such a big scratchable is you're significantly hurting this team insanely. That's different than you're not playing your best hockey. And there is a difference, whether you like it or not, when Sean Couturier's not playing his best and how long that leash is, and when Bobby Brink isn't playing his best and how long that leash is. Because, yeah, when you work up the resume that Couturier has worked up in his entire career, you need to understand and acknowledge that that person is held differently and held accountable differently than a young kid who's trying to earn his way into the league. You give those guys their ups and downs, and you know they might turn the puck over here and there, but how was the work ethic on the back check to get back? I mean, there's plenty of things that you could take positives from and say, hey, those type of mistakes are going to happen if we're going to let him blossom, right? There's plenty of different ways, but each person needs to be handled differently. That's obvious as hell, and this is just where we are with John Tortorella right now, and it is pretty wild. He would not be my first pick. He would just not be my first pick at all. I'd work my ass off for him for sure, because I know if I didn't, I wouldn't be playing. I'd give everything I have out there, but I just hope and pray that I fall into that 95% that understand and we communicate where exactly I am, because if I am in that 5%, you'll probably lose me. Now, who else spoke? Jody Shelley. So Jody Shelley also talked about this, and he said that one of the reasons why he feels this can work right now with the current spot of where the Flyers are is because of the idea that there's a lot of youth in the room, and if it was filled with veterans, it's like, dude, what are you doing, man? Like, you are so disrespecting Sean Couturier, it's outrageous, and then you lose, like, the veteran core of your room. But because these kids are all young, they're all hungry, Tyson Forster, while I'm sure these guys are fighting for one another, and it does seem like that locker room is very close, considering we saw what happened not too long ago with Kevin Hayes and Ivan Provorov and Tony DeAngelo and plenty of these other personalities in the locker room. They do absolutely work their ass off for one another. But let's be honest, Bobby Brink, Tyson Forster, Owen Tippett, there is this idea of self-awareness of realizing, how can I make sure I'm playing well enough where Tortorella loves me and I can keep playing? Like, I need to make sure, hey, I'm in the bigs. I got to stay in the bigs. How do I stay in the bigs? There's definitely that type of mentality. So, okay, go ahead. You disrespect Sean Couturier. I got to focus on winning my puck battles in the corner, because if I don't, I'll be sitting with Sean Couturier. There is a level of that thinking too. And these kids are so young and they're so hungry and they're so willing to do anything because they want to have a chance to consistently play in the NHL night in and night out, and they can't let this opportunity slip, that they ain't worried about Coots. And because of the young locker room you have the ability to sort of play this card differently than if Zdeno Chara, Brad Marchand, Pasta, Patrice Bergeron. If Tortorella walked into the Boston Bruins locker room and sat Patrice Bergeron down, or David Krejci when he comes back and the Bruins think they have a, sit your ass down. You're not playing Bergeron. You're not playing Marchand. Hey, Z, Big Z, I'm sitting your ass down for 2 games. Shut up. No, I'm not. That would sort of be how it would go. You don't have the luxury of being this way if you're in a different setting, if you will. So just take that for what it is. I just think it's fascinating to look at his approach, and I like a lot of what he does. I do. I like that. Not so much fear, because, yeah, I mean, there is fear that you want to play. I heard Lundqvist actually speak on one of the TNT broadcasts with Biz and, the whole crew that they do, and Gretzky was on there, and they were just talking about his time in New York with John Tortorella, and he was like, yeah, man, like, you're scared to play for him and all, in a way where I think he was sort of tongue-in-cheek, but not, right? Like, you got to give it your all. It's different for goalies, I think, too, because even Torts has talked about it in the past, like, the goalie coaches will pay attention to the goalie coaches. That's not my thing. Paraphrasing a little, but yeah, the goalie world is completely different with angles and this and that, whatever. But the point is, I like the fact that when teams come play Philly, you know that this is no walk in the park. If you went to San Jose right now, if you went to Arizona right now, if you went to some of these other teams right now, dude, it's hysterical. Come on. It's a walk in the park. It's an easy 2 points. You can nonchalantly go about your business. If you play Chicago, all you got to worry about is Connor Bedard. There's nobody else there. Don't worry about it, right? Hey, put your focus on this, and you can go out, roll 4 lines, roll 3 lines a day, maybe get a couple power play goals. Hey, your penalty kill struggling over the last 5 games. Chicago gets a power play. San Jose gets a power play. I don't even know where these guys fall in the standings. I just imagine that it's not particularly great. And it's like, hey, you get a couple of kills in a row, all right? It's like, all right. And then from there, you feel good about yourself. Well, that will never happen against a John Tortorella-led team, because it's bringing the energy nonstop. Here's your power plays, by the way, in the league right now. Your power play percentage. The Flyers are a whomping last place. Can't get any worse than that. What teams did I just mention? San Jose. San Jose's a little bit better than I anticipated. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. 19th in the league. 19th in the league. Chicago's only a few spots up from the Fly guys. So I was right on target. Hey, Columbus has a bad peeper. We know Pittsburgh has a bad power play. It's crazy to think about with Crosby and some of their top talent to be sitting around 14%. But nothing's worse than this hideous, disgusting 12.73. 12.73% is the Whomping Flyers power play. I've never seen anything like it in my life. All right, let's move on to the next coach. I think we spent a little more time than I maybe thought when it comes to Torch, but that wouldn't be on my list of people that I'd be dying to play for, even though I could handle it more than maybe you think I can. Just in case I fall into this 5% Couturier thing, no thank you. But if I fall into the Noah Cates or the Cam York, or, like a young kid that he like Tyson Forster, he plays a 200-foot game. I like what he does. If I fall into that category, I mean, I'd love a John Tortorella. The problem is, it doesn't make any sense. There's no reason to pick on Couturier like this. This is crazy. It's crazy. It's crazy. Anyway, Let's get to Nick Sirianni. That wouldn't work for me. I'm sorry. Maybe for a year, maybe for a year and a half, especially not after what we saw last season. Once I'm out on the Sirianni thing, it is so hard to grab me back, and I just don't know how long it would last. The core value thing just blows my mind that we are playing professional sports. This is almost the exact opposite. So John Tortorella, old school, hard ass, and then now you have Nick Sirianni, and I know he throws those temper tantrums, and people who cover the team said they have seen multiple different examples of him during training camp really getting on the wide receivers for maybe not doing what they need to be doing, or he's blowing the whistle, he's screaming at everybody. He has that fiery side, but I don't think it has the impact that he would like it to have because of the other things, and especially when you hear stories about how he needs Big Dom to handle his emotions, and he's even been pretty vocal about it himself, that I need to do a better job on the sidelines. Well, dude, I know we're all still learning and we're all still growing, and you are a young head coach, so you know it's not just going to be perfect from day one. You need to go through those ups and downs, but I also feel that's him. John Tortorella is never going to change. Rob Thompson's never going to change. Nick Nurse is never really going to change. There's some things that are just in you that stick in your blood. And there may be areas that you can work on. I mean, yes, there is development in coaching. I'm sure that there are some things, if you look at Tortorella day one, year two, compared to now, that have adapted over time. Might not feel that way, but I'm sure there's little tinier details, especially with the new wave of athletes. I mean, you have to some level, you have to. But with Sirianni, part of him, just like part of me, right, is this, the obnoxiousness. Well, I mean, I could maybe tweak the obnoxiousness here and there, but the obnoxiousness is in the blood. It's not going anywhere. When I hit record, the mic's in my face. There's one way about going my business here, and this is how it goes. And you could say, well, you can calm down a little bit here, you can work with this, you could do that, and yeah, for sure, absolutely. I'm not against coaching and hearing people out, and I love getting constructive criticism from people in the business that have been doing it for many, many years, and I respect what they tell me, and I try and work on my craft and all this stuff, for sure. But at the end of the day, in my blood is this style. So some variation of this style, as I continue to blossom in this industry, is no doubt a thing. Well, I feel that way with Nick Sirianni, that as much as he could say, well, I'll tone it down a little bit on the sideline here, it's not who he is. Who he is standing on the sideline, screaming, being emotional, screaming at the Kansas City fans. And when adversity hits, I don't think that his style really resonates with the crew, with the guys, because so far, every time things go wrong, like for example, that first season that's always mentioned, we started off and it wasn't so hot. Then what happened? Well, you handed it off to Shane Steichen. You took it off your plate because you're not good enough at it, and you allowed somebody else to do it. And in theory, hey, that's great. Our head coach is willing to not really focus on him being the guy, and he's not stubborn, and he's not putting his feet in the mud and saying, this is what I do, so we're going to ride with it. He's willing to adapt, and yeah, that's great until everything falls apart, and we need you. We need you because Brian Johnson isn't getting the job done. So now it's on the head coach to step up, but the only way they fix it in the past is when they removed those duties from his plate. So it is a very bizarre situation that we're in right now with Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio and your head coach because of the downfall of last season. But I just don't think that telling these professional athletes, all right, we're going to compete. Well, come on, dude. We're going to compete. Well, I would think so. We got to compete. Compete? That's a core value. You put it up on your PowerPoint presentation, got your bullet points. Bullet point 1, compete. Thanks, coach. Appreciate it, man. Needed that. Needed that before I put on the pads. Come on. And it's the delivery. It's the tone. You could sell me. Seriously. I mean, maybe this is hypocritical, but I'm just being honest with you. If Mike Tomlin had a PowerPoint and it was number 1 was compete, and his delivery was different, And just because his presence is more powerful, I'd be like, yo, damn right, coach. I'd have my fingers in the dirt during the PowerPoint presentation. I'd be strapping up the pads, going ready to compete. But the thing is, because Mike Tomlin has built his respect and has built sort of who he is over the years, you can get away with that stuff. But I promise you, I don't think he's doing it the way Nick Sirianni does. Nick Sirianni's doing it super corny, doesn't connect. I'm telling you, it's just fraudulent. It's fraudulent. So Nick Sirianni's the extreme opposite. I'd rather have Tortorella. If you told me I had to play for one of these two, Nick Sirianni or Torts, I'd at least go down swinging with the Tortorella realm if I had to choose as the athlete. The Sirianni thing just doesn't fly for me. I think it's too. I'd rather go way too hard ass than walk all over guy, because at least the hard ass. I mean, look, on both sides of the extremes, I think it could be a negative, right? Because if you know that this head coach and Nick Sirianni just doesn't have it, you start to chitter-chatter behind the scenes and you start talking to one another in your stalls, and you're like, this guy just doesn't have it. Then it becomes you're making up plays during the middle of the game, chucking it downfield against Seattle, and it's a 50-50 ball. A.J. Brown doesn't catch it. It's an interception. And then on the fly, your team isn't even listening anymore. That's a problem. And then the extreme of Tortorella is, it's so hostile. It's a toxic work environment. It's like everyone's like, what is this guy doing? Why is he picking on Koo? Then it creates like a friction in the locker room, and there's a fracture there because it's clicky. It gets clicky. It's the guys that Torts like, and then they're all communicating about it, saying, hey, how about those guys bitching that are scratched, huh? And then you have the guys that aren't really feeling it, and they're all bickering like, dude, this guy's an animal. I don't understand. And then it sort of breaks the locker room apart. But I think I do at least respect, like, I don't agree with it at all. I really don't. I don't agree with it. But I do think it's coming in his mind. I don't think like he does, but in his mind, it's coming from a place of pushing Couturier in a way that is unorthodox. I'm not telling you why. You have to figure it out. That's the difference in being a leader in this league. That's the difference in elevating yourself, and you're different now. You wear a C on your chest. It means something in the NHL world. Why do you have it? You tell me why. Like, I don't agree with this mental crazy screw up, but I do believe in his world it's coming from a good space, and he has more answers than Sirianni. He's a better coach than Sirianni. There's a lot more positives than Sirianni, so I'll take that. Even with the flaws of Tortorella, I'll take that because I think he's such a stronger coach in a majority sense of what it means to be a coach. There's a lot more positives on his plate, even though his negatives do come to an extreme. I'll take that over Sirianni. The Rob Thompson era is fascinating because it's all about faith. I believe in my guys. I'm sticking to my guns. Once again, very opposite of a Rob Thompson. I'd say closer to Nick Sirianni in regards to player relationship. Definitely a laid-back dude. That's not Sirianni at all, but I'm saying more along the lines of just relationships. That's part of the core values, creating that bond. But it's totally different because of the long journey and the 162, that we're not going to react to these 7 games, these 8 games, these 10 games, because we got 3 more months of this. So just because of the lackadaisical approach of how long the season is, you're more willing to give these guys opportunities to work out of this. But how long was he keeping Nick Castellano, not Nick Sirianni? Couldn't imagine Nick Sirianni with a bat in his hands trying to swing. Probably strike out 9 times in a row. Probably Johan Roa struggle again and put him 1 down. But anyway, Nick Castellanos, how many times we're like, you got to move him out. You can't keep putting him there. You got to put him deep in the lineup. Maybe he's not even in the damn lineup. This is atrocious. And he's out there, and he's out there, and he's out there. Hey, Alec Boehm, and he's out there, and he's out there in prime positions, even though he's not showing any power. He's poking it the other way. It's just not there yet. It's not what we need. Well, then why is he in a position where he's in a power spot in the lineup, this and that? And he just stays with his guys. But until he doesn't. Because I wonder what Zach Wheeler was thinking the moment he got the ball taken from him in Game 6 against the Houston Astros, World Series on the line. Jose Alvarado, lefty, Yordan Alvarez, ball goes boom. Bomb! 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 That thing was a fucking bomb. How does Zach Wheeler feel after that moment? How does Bryce, how do they feel? Do they believe it was the right decision? Hey, it worked out previously in the postseason run. That was our matchup. I'm going with what has gotten me here. What's gotten me here is utilizing the Jose Alvarado. Now, that's different from our last situation that occurred with Rob going to Craig Kimbrell. Because we can say what we feel about Craig Kimbrell as Phillies fans, but I do believe that there's something to be said about Bryson Stott, Alec Bohm, Bryce Harper, Nick Castellanos, Real Muto. This guy has 1 billion saves in his Major League Baseball career. 1 billion. And they all know, because Bryce Harper can go through an 0 for 24 stretch. Would never happen, but let's say he does. That 25th at-bat, it could be a bomb. It could be a home run. It could be a solo shot that breaks a tie, and now you're in the lead. Why? Because, well, he's been doing this for a long-ass time, and eventually you sort of find yourself again. I wouldn't be surprised if they don't despise the move to Craig Kimbrell the way we despise the move to Craig Kimbrell, because this guy is a Hall of Fame level closer who has been in the position with all of his saves throughout his career. This guy has done it 1 billion times. And if you're telling me my season's on the line and we have to go to our pen and it's Craig Kimbrell, I will absolutely go with that, and I don't hate Rob Thompson's decision for doing it. I'd imagine that's how the locker room feels. The Johan Rojas thing, that's probably different. I'd imagine that they don't want their bases loaded opportunity to make the floodgates go open, and you can totally take control of a game to be in the hands of Johan Rojas, who could barely sniff Major League Baseball pitching at the time. It was just too much for him. That maybe not so much, but that's also what makes Rob Thompson have that connection with his guys, which is, listen, I love you guys, and I believe in all of you guys, and this is what it is. And he probably didn't even believe in Rojas. It was more about the idea of keeping his defense in the game, because if you take him out of the game and then something happened out in left field. But here's the difference, or anything happened out in the outfield in general, you're built to score. You're built to produce runs. You're built for offense. Let's make our offense be the reason why you win. That's why you win, right? I'll live with the opportunity to put a better bat at the dish. Even if Pache, I don't care, that's better. Even if it's Cape, that's better. If it's anybody but Rojas, that's better. And I'll live with the alternative defensively if that means I get a better swing at the plate. That at-bat was hideous. It was about 4 pitches, not even close to the plate. Oh, my God, it was just atrocious. I can't stand reliving it. But there's no doubt that Rob Thompson has definitely built a really good, strong relationship and has become a really good manager. And I think that he probably... It's between him and Nick Nurse in regards to who I think the best are. But Nick Nurse is interesting. He seems like a little bit different of a guy, a unique guy, an interesting guy. When I was over at the Fanatic, I had a chance to interview him. And when he first got here, just trying to get I love asking people who are just into town, whether it's an athlete, someone who's kind of getting adjusted to this city, this fan base. Tell me something about you outside of basketball. Tell me something about you outside of the sport of football. What fans would like to know about you, Nick Nurse, not just the basketball coach. He talks about music and this and that. It's very cool. But I think he's got like an interesting personality off to the side. But the reason why it's so easy to buy in is the dude knows his ball. The guy is a tactician. And when you know your sport, when you know your craft, it's easy to buy in. I don't think, especially, and I'm not knocking Doc as much as others knock Doc. I'm not knocking Brett, who's learned under Greg Popovich. It's not that. But when you go to an extreme of tactician, this guy is Mr. X and O. This guy is Mr. Scheme. This guy is Mr. Game Plan. And maybe others were. Like, I thought Doc had a plan. And on a scale of 1 to 10, if 10 is the ultimate, this is the best plan a team could do, I think Doc has an idea, has a philosophy that is like a 7.5, 8 out of 10. There's some limitations, but it's strong, and he never moves from it. This is what we do, and we'll constantly be a 7.5 out of 10, an 8 out of 10, and that's good. It's not bad. That's why he gets all these regular season wins. But when the postseason comes around and teams make adjustments to pretty much counter what you do, and then you stick to your guns and say, well, this is what we do, I'll never, ever, ever find a way to counter. Well, and in basketball, you have to. Baseball, going with the lineup that's gotten you there is different than my schematics in basketball when you make a 7-game adjustment thing, like a 7-game adjustment thing, a game plan over 7 games when you're making schematical adjustments. There's differences to it. And I believe that when you go through some of these coaches they've been through, and then Nick Nurse is here, and you see his level of awareness and his level of details and the way that he's incorporating different things. And go, oh, geez, I mean, Doug never would go like this. I mean, you can easily be attached to the tactician side of Nick Nurse. And I do believe that he's a good people person. I do believe that he sits down and gets to know Joel Embiid, gets to know Tyrese Maxey. Seems like a good heart-warming type of guy to want to say unique. I do think there's some interesting things, and I'm like, hey, he's a little interesting guy, but I think he cares about you. He lets you know he cares about you. It'll be a very open door policy, could communicate. He's very new here. We don't know everything, and especially in a year where we have no idea what the Sixers are because Joel Embiid's not available. They're getting smoked out on the West Coast. They're barely even watchable. It sucks. It really does. So we're not having the same impact of a season because they're sort of getting lost in the sauce a little bit. If they even make the playoffs, a play-in game, the whole thing is just so messy and sloppy. But I believe his ability to really scheme things up and be creative and do things that maybe are out of the ordinary and to try different concepts. And his brain works in a way that when you play the sport of basketball and you see what his brain is doing and how calculated he is, it's like, whoa, dude, I mean, I'm in. I like this style. I like this. It's all over the place in regards to trying different things and all, but that's why he's great, is he's a tactician and he's willing to get out of the box and try different sets and try different defensive things. And it's something I'm fascinated by. It's new, it's raw, and this is not the season to really get behind everything Nick Nurse is because the play without the big man has made the entertainment value dip, whether you want to admit it or not. I'm a big diehard Sixers guy, but I can't run away from reality, and that's reality. So that's sort of where we're at with this whole coaching staff thing and looking at all the coaches here in this town. And I thought it would be a nice little casual Saturday morning talk, if you will. What coach do you think you would enjoy playing for the most? I'd say it's between Rob Thompson and Nick Nurse. That's where I'm at. It would probably go Rob, Nick, Torts, Nick. Wait, I said Nick twice, but I meant two different Nicks. Rob Thompson, Nick Nurse, John Tortorella, Nick Sirianni. That would be the order for me. But what say you? Thank you guys all so much for hanging out with me. I love you to death, and we'll be talking very, very soon.